So you've obviously spent a lot of time thinking about subscription podcast, and you recently wrote a piece about how Joe Rogan basically could be making more money through subscription rather than ads or the deal he did. You had originally made the analysis on Howard Stern and the Sirius deal. So maybe give us just kind of a 1-minute summary of the math that you're using there and the logic behind why Rogan or somebody else going subscription versus ads makes more sense.
Yeah. So I think, I've described it as podcasters are a bunch of farmers and they own fertile land, right? Their only way of making money off the land is to grow vegetables, which is a lot of work. It's backbreaking labor, right? And that's advertising. So they do the advertising. It's a pain in the ass to sell. They have to have some douchey salesperson who does all the ad sales. They're negotiating. And a lot of podcasters, they're often public intellectuals or non-business people. So to them, often they're kind of allergic to that idea and they don't want to deal with that. And so when someone like Spotify comes along and says, look, you're making $20 million a year, we'll give you 25, 30, and come over and we'll deal with all your ad sales. I think that's very, very attractive to them. What I've been making the case for is that there's actually a lot of oil beneath the farmland, and that's the real value. And the oil is recurring membership subscription. So when Howard Stern went to Sirius, he had this huge public radio, or not public radio, but private, FM radio listenership of, I think it was like 5, 10, 15 million people every day tuned in to listen to Howard. And when he went to Sirius, they fully gated him. So they said, pay us $19 a month and you can listen to Howard Stern. Otherwise you can't, right? And in doing so, that drove massive revenue. We kind of did some napkin math. We estimate probably between $300 and $400 million a year of serious revenue as just people who want to listen to Howard Stern, right? When he did that deal, he could not have gone out and started his own radio station and bought satellites and done all this stuff and cut out the middleman. There had to be a middleman. Either it was FM radio and a network or it was satellite radio. They made him the best deal. My argument with Howard Stern is that Stern should just cut out the middleman, that all the technology that has been developed over the last decade in podcasting makes all of their satellites and distribution completely irrelevant. My argument is that Stern should leave Sirius. He should start a podcast and he should basically have the podcast cut off after 30 minutes, similar to what Sam Harris does, or 10 minutes, or maybe it's only for subscribers. And he should rebuild his audience there via subscription and charge the same amount Sirius was charging, except he gets 100% of it. And if you look at his business, he needs a microphone, he needs an internet connection, maybe he needs a talent booker, and maybe an assistant or something. So he can make 90, 98, 99% net margins. So that was about 6 or 7 months ago. And in that same article, I basically said, look, Joe Rogan is 10 times bigger than the current audience of, Sirius and Howard Stern. It's insane that he's probably a billionaire and he just doesn't know it yet. He's got billions of dollars of oil under his farm. And so Rogan, he could go subscription just like Howard Stern and do his own deal. He could just say, now you got to pay to listen to me. Let's do that. That doesn't seem like his vibe. So what I'm basically estimating is if he simply just said 1 episode a week or the last 20 minutes of every episode is subscriber only, there's still going to be ads. And if you subscribe, you get an ad-free stream. So the ads are edited out and you get the extra 20 minutes at the end of every episode or 1 extra episode a week or something. And maybe some kind of exclusive content for true fans, maybe streaming video or something like that. And if you just assume a 5% conversion rate, which is, maybe his most loyal fans, the numbers are staggering, right? So I estimate he could do somewhere between 60 to $100 million a year at a minimum with that hybrid approach, maybe more than that if he was a little more aggressive. And so, as a business person, I look at this and I go, this is very, very easy to execute. This does not require advanced technology. It doesn't require crazy business management. It doesn't require a big team. He could easily do that tomorrow. And yet he ended up opting to go to Spotify. And while I don't know the exact terms of his deal, from what's been reported in the Wall Street Journal and stuff, it's somewhere in the range of $50 to $100 million. And it's unclear of exactly how it's structured, whether that's an annual thing or whatever. Now, everybody's saying, well, he just licensed it. So he just gave them 3 years exclusive to go to Spotify. The reason why I think that's a bad deal, even let's say lifestyle wise, he just hates selling ads. He doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't want to think about this stuff. I think it's a bad deal because at the end of the day, these guys want impact. They want to be heard by as many people as possible. And they have this loudspeaker, and I think they like that. What he's doing is giving over his direct line of communication to his listeners, his podcast feed, and the direct relationship where he can put anything he wants in that feed and it goes directly to the subscribers. He's now given that to Spotify, and Spotify's in the middle of that. And what it means is that over the next 3 years, if his audience doubles, when he leaves Spotify, he loses all those new subscribers. And yeah, maybe they'll go find him once he leaves, but he loses that direct relationship. And so to me, you never want to lose your direct relationship with your customer when you're an influencer. To me, it's like, imagine if Kylie Jenner or someone that's huge on Twitter went out and said, hey guys, I've sold my Twitter rights to, CNN, and now CNN's going to tweet on my behalf. So you're losing all those subscribers and all those followers. So while objectively Joe Rogan is killing it, and Howard Stern is killing it too, guys made $500 million or whatever. I'm not criticizing that. As a business strategist, I think it's insane. I think it's totally the wrong move. And I think that Rogan, he was just sitting on oil and he didn't know how to drill it and he wasn't even aware of it. And so my argument is that he should just do it himself, but it's too late for that.
Yeah. And I think part of this, like Howard Stern, I actually went deep after I read your piece and went back, and it's hard to remember. Howard Stern signed that original, $100 million a year for 5-year deal in 2004. And so I said, what's he been getting paid since then? And he basically signed a 12-year deal. And the other data point I found is they estimate that he made about $90 million last year. So there's a good chance he's been getting paid, 80 to 100 million bucks a year for over a decade now. Right. And so a lot of people would say, hey, that's not that big of a deal. But to your point, I think that the numbers are like close to only 1 million people or so are listening to the show now versus you see a Rogan who maybe it's not directly competitive in terms of the content, but it's very similar. And he's got, 5 or 10 or 15 times the size of the audience. And so what that then leads to is this idea of like the creator used to be very similar to an actor, right? Hey, you select me, I participate in your movie, you pay me a fee, and I move on. And that's basically what they were doing with advertisers. But now we're seeing across platforms, whether it's TikTok stars, YouTube, podcasters, whatever, they're building real businesses, right? And they're looking at this as, I need diversified revenue streams, and they understand that the value is in that audience. And so Kylie's probably the best example where she built a $1 billion business off the back of having that audience. But are you seeing other creators, maybe people who are using kind of paid podcasts and then they have other tools, or just people who haven't gotten into paid podcasts yet, but they're building these multiple revenue streams? And can you talk a little bit about how you see that playing out over time?
Yeah. I mean, I think, if you look at like 1998, the model used to be, okay, I'm going to start a dumb, Yo Mama joke website on Yahoo, and I'm going to put a bunch of ugly banners on it, right? I think that's the era of podcasting we're in right now. And I think that people will realize that not only is it better to have subscriber support because you get more buy-in, people are more loyal, and you don't really owe anyone anything. You can talk about any brand, you can say anything you want. There's no advertisers to pull their advertising. As long as your audience likes you, they'll keep paying you, but that it's recurring and it's higher margin because you're not going through ad sales or anything like that. And I think for a lot of podcasters, they're anxious because they have all these ads on, but they don't know. Maybe the CPM rates drop like crazy in 6 months. Maybe all the startups go away and they're not going to fund podcast advertising. Maybe Squarespace lowers the budget. Maybe Audible lowers the budget, right? So I think that it's just a better model. And we're seeing this across all media, that ultimately subscription for software, newsletters, podcasting, et cetera, it's just better in so many ways. So I think that over time, that realization is going to hit. And if you think about it, there's already, all these models already exist in plain sight, right? You look at Ben Thompson at Stratechery has been writing a subscription newsletter that's pay only with a few pieces of content previewed for free publicly since 2014. I don't know anything. I think he's making millions of dollars doing that. And now wasn't until 2019 that Substack popped up and all these writers started going, hey, I can go direct to consumer. I don't need to go work for New York Times. I can write my own newsletter. And as long as I have 1,000 true fans, I can make a living. And over time, I can compound those fans and grow it significantly. In the podcasting world, Sam Harris has been doing this since 2013. Right. And he doesn't have any advertising. I have no idea what he's doing revenue wise, but I would assume he's doing well if it's still working. And he just doubled down on his subscription stuff. Now, after 30 minutes, it just cuts off and it says, hey, if you want to keep listening on every single episode, you've got to pay. So I think there's people that are doing it very successfully. And we've helped people with Supercast and with our podcast agency, Double Up. We've helped all sorts of people find the oil underneath their plot of land. I can't name names, but there's multiple people who are like influencers with huge audiences, and they were making so little money off it because they're not business people, right? And so we were able to help them, build a sustainable business. And that's such a cool thing for us, right? To show people, hey, you're a farmer, but now we're worth $10 million, right?